Previously in Shadows of the South.
After dark, hooves, violent, fast, running, from fire.
In many regions of rural Brazil, nights are known for their silence, the quiet rhythm of the countryside after dark. But every so often, that silence breaks. Hooves, fast, violent, running through the fields. But then another sound follows, a roar, not from an animal, from fire, a mule, running wildly through the night. But where its head should be, there is only flames. They call this creature the Headless Mule.
Shadows of the South.
And according to Brazilian folklore, it is not a monster that was born in the forest. It is a curse, one that begins with a human mistake and ends with fire racing endlessly through the night. The legend of the Headless Mule has existed for centuries. It is one of the most widely known stories in Brazilian folklore, passed down through generations in villages, farms, and isolated communities. Children heard it from their grandparents. Farmers repeated it while working in the fields. Travelers whispered about it when strange noises echoed across distant plains. The story was never simply meant to frighten people. Instead, it carried a warning, a reminder that certain rules, especially in older societies, were not meant to be broken. Because according to the legend, the Headless Mule was once a woman. And the creature that people fear in the darkness is the result of a transformation that begins with a forbidden act. In the earliest versions of the story, the curse begins with a relationship that was considered deeply forbidden. It tells of a woman who became romantically involved with a priest. During colonial times in Brazil, this was believed to be a serious violation of sacred rules. And according to the folklore, punishment for such a violation did not come from society alone. It came from something supernatural. The legend says that once the curse was triggered, the woman would no longer remain human. Instead, every Thursday night, something terrible would happen. Her body would begin to change, bones shifting, limbs twisting, her voice disappearing into something unrecognizable, and eventually her human form would vanish completely. In its place would appear a creature forced to run through the night, a mule without a head. Stories describing the transformation are among the most frightening parts of the legend. Witnesses claim the event was never silent. It began with screams, a woman's voice echoing through the night as something unseen took hold. Then the sound would change, her voice fading into the cry of an animal, hooves striking the ground, the smell of smoke filling the air, and suddenly the creature would emerge, a mule, racing wildly through the darkness. But the most terrifying detail was impossible to ignore. Where the creature's head should be, flames burst violently into the night. Not a small flicker, not a spark, but a continuous eruption of fire rising from its neck, like a living torch. The fire of the Headless Mule is one of the most mysterious parts of the legend. Unlike normal flames, it does not appear to consume anything around it. The fire burns constantly. Yet, the creature leaves little evidence behind. Grass does not ignite, trees rarely burn. The flames seem to exist only as part of the curse itself, Some storytellers even describe the fire as a symbol, a visible reminder of the punishment placed upon the creature, a fire that cannot be extinguished and cannot be escaped. Once the transformation is complete, the creature begins to run, and according to the legend, it cannot stop. It runs across fields, through forests, across rivers, sometimes even through villages. Nothing slows it down. Fences break beneath its weight. Dust rises from the ground as its hooves strike the earth with impossible speed. Witnesses describe seeing streaks of light moving across the darkness as the flames illuminate the path ahead. But despite its destructive movement, the creature does not seem to attack people intentionally. Instead, it runs as if something is chasing it, or as if it is trying to outrun the curse itself. For people living in rural communities, the arrival of the Headless Mule was believed to be preceded by certain signs. Animals would react first. Dogs would bark continuously. Horses in nearby stables would panic and try to break free. Birds would suddenly abandon their nests. Then the wind would change. A strange smell would spread through the air, not the smell of burning wood, but something metallic and sharp. And finally the sound would begin. Hooves, rapid, uncontrolled, approaching faster than any normal animal should be able to move. Over time, stories emerged about ways to stop the creature. Some believed that if someone managed to remove the iron bridle from the mule's mouth, the curse would be broken. Others believed the creature could be saved if someone called the woman's original name while it ran past. But these attempts required enormous courage, because approaching the creature meant stepping directly into a storm of fire and violence, and most people chose to hide instead, waiting for the sound of hooves to fade back into the darkness. Even today, reports occasionally appear from rural areas describing strange events that resemble the old legend. Some people claim to see flashes of fire racing across distant fields at night. Others report hearing hoofbeats echoing through empty farmland long after midnight. Scientists often attribute these sightings to natural explanations, distant vehicles, optical illusions, or reflections from faraway lights. But those who grew up hearing the story say the sound of hooves in the darkness is unmistakable, and when the ground vibrates beneath those footsteps, the legend suddenly feels much closer to reality. Like many ancient myths, the story of the Headless Mule carries deeper cultural meaning. Historians believe the legend reflects the strict moral rules that existed during colonial times. Stories like this were used to enforce social expectations and warn people about the consequences of breaking them. But over time, the legend evolved. The frightening image of a flaming creature running endlessly through the night became something more than a moral lesson. It became part of the cultural identity of Brazil itself. A story shared not just to warn people, but to explain the mysterious sounds and shadows that appear in the darkness of the countryside. Today, the legend of the Headless Mule continues to exist, somewhere between myth and mystery. Some treat it as nothing more than folklore, a dramatic story created to frighten children and enforce old traditions. But others remain unsure, because every generation seems to produce new stories, new witnesses, new unexplained sounds echoing across empty land. And sometimes, late at night, people claim to see something racing across the horizon, a streak of fire, moving faster than any horse, vanishing before anyone can get close enough to understand what it truly is. Whether the Headless Mule is simply a legend, or something older hiding in the darkness, one detail remains the same in every version of the story. The creature only appears at night. It runs without stopping, and the fire rising from its neck never fades. So if you ever find yourself in the quiet countryside after midnight, and the silence suddenly breaks with the sound of hooves racing through the darkness, you may want to step away from the road, because some fires are not meant to be followed, and some curses never truly end.
Next episode in Shadows of the South.
Water unnaturally still, no movement, calling your name. Something is watching. Too late.